We've received a lot of stories from our subscribers, some strange, some unsettling. But the stories in today's video truly shocked us. It's the kind of tale that lingers in your mind long after you've heard it, leaving you with a chilling sense of unease. Let me tell you about Elena, a young woman whose encounter with something unexplainable left those around her questioning what might still be out there in the dark. My friend has gone missing, and I'm certain something unnatural is involved. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I've tried to convince myself there's a logical explanation. But the more I replay the events leading up to her disappearance, the more I come back to one terrifying conclusion. Elena didn't just vanish. Something took her. I've been asked this question 100 times. What happened to Elena? The truth is, I don't know. I wish I did. She was my best friend, the one person who truly understood me, and I tried to help her. But by the time I realized how serious things were, it was too late. This is what I do know. Elena and I grew up together. She was the type of person who could light up a room just by walking into it. Kind, funny, a little reckless at times, but in a way that made life feel exciting. After college, we stayed close, even as our lives started to drift in different directions. When her grandmother passed away, Elena inherited her house, a small, cozy place in the suburbs. It was an old-fashioned house with floral wallpaper and creaky wooden floors, but Elena loved it. She'd spent most of her childhood there, and she always said it felt like home. At first, she was excited to move in. She spent weeks fixing it up, painting the walls, and adding her own touch to the place. I visited her a few times during that period, and everything seemed normal. Better than normal, really. Elena seemed happy. But then, something changed. It started with little things. One night, Elena called me, sounding frustrated. She said she'd misplaced her keys and was sure she'd left them on the kitchen counter. Later, she found them sitting on the windowsill in her bedroom, a place she swore she hadn't been all day. I told her not to worry about it. We all forget things sometimes, right? But then, a few days later, she called me again, this time sounding scared. "Oh, what's wrong?" I asked. "I think someone's been in the house," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She told me she'd come home from work to find the back door unlocked. She thought she might have forgotten to lock it, but then she noticed something else. The curtains in the living room had been drawn shut. Elena never closed those curtains. I offered to come over, but she said it was fine. "It's probably just my imagination," she said. "I've been stressed with work, and I'm overthinking things." But I could tell she didn't believe that. A few weeks later, Elena told me she'd found something strange in the house, a diary. It had been tucked away in a drawer in her grandmother's bedroom, and at first, she thought it was just a collection of old memories. But when she started reading, she realized it was something else entirely. "It's weird," she told me over the phone. "It's not like a regular diary. It's all these notes and instructions like, don't look into the shadows or never acknowledge him." "Him?" I asked. "I don't know who him is." The whole thing feels paranoid, like Grandma was afraid of something. I laughed nervously. "You don't actually believe any of that, do you?" "No," she said quickly. "Of course not. It's just creepy, you know?" Over the next few weeks, Elena became more withdrawn. She stopped answering my calls as often, and when we did talk, she sounded distracted, like she wasn't really there. One day, I went to visit her unannounced. I knocked on the door, and when she opened it, I barely recognized her. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes and her hair unwashed. "Elena, what's going on?" I asked. She hesitated before stepping aside to let me in. The house was darker than I remembered, with the curtains drawn and only a few lamps lit. "I think there's something in the house," she said finally. I froze. "What do you mean?" She told me she'd been seeing things, shadows moving in the corners of her vision, strange shapes that disappeared when she turned to look. At night, she heard whispers, faint but persistent, coming from somewhere deep in the house. "It sounds crazy, doesn't it?" she said, her voice breaking. I wanted to tell her it was just stress, that everything was fine, but the truth was I didn't know what to say. I could see the fear in her eyes, and it scared me too. The last time I spoke to Elena was a week later. She called me late at night, her voice shaking. "He was here," she said. "Oh, the man, the one from the diary." I felt a chill run down my spine. Elena, what are you talking about? She told me she'd woken up in the middle of the night to the feeling of being watched. When she opened her eyes, she saw a figure standing at the foot of her bed. It was just a shadow, she said. I couldn't see his face, but he was there, and he was watching me. What did you do? I asked. Nothing. I remembered what the diary said. Don't acknowledge him. So I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. She started crying. I don't know if I can do this anymore. That was the last thing she ever said to me. I went to her house the next day, but she was gone. The door was locked, and the windows were dark. I tried calling her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I called the police, but they didn't find anything unusual. No signs of a struggle, no evidence of foul play. The only thing they found was the diary, sitting on the kitchen table. I took it home with me, hoping it would give me some kind of answer, but reading it only made things worse. It wasn't just instructions. It was a warning. The watcher feeds on fear. Never look at him. Never speak to him. Never let him know you see him. I don't know what happened to Elena. Maybe she finally cracked and ran away. Maybe she found a way to escape whatever was haunting her. Or maybe the watcher got her. All I know is I can't bring myself to go near that house again. Sometimes when I drive past it, I see lights flickering inside. And late at night, when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear Elena's voice, faint and distant, calling for help. Elena's story leaves us with more questions than answers. A chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left undisturbed. The next story comes directly from one of our subscribers, a doctor who shared his experience in his own words. It's a heartbreaking account of a decision he'll regret for the rest of his life. Here's what he told us. They say doctors save lives. That's what we're trained for, what we swear to do. But no one talks about the ones we don't save, the ones we choose not to save. I've carried that choice with me every single day since it happened. It wasn't supposed to end this way. I wasn't supposed to end up in this empty house, staring at my shaking hands, wondering if I'll ever step into an operating room again. But now I don't even know if I want to. This is my story. I became a surgeon because I wanted to be the best. I wanted to look death in the eye and win, to be the name people whispered when there was no hope left. And I did it. I made a name for myself early on, pulling off surgeries others wouldn't touch. Miracle worker, they called me, but with success came something else. Arrogance. I told myself I deserved it. I worked harder than anyone I knew. My hours were endless, my precision unmatched. Over time, though, something changed. I stopped seeing patients as people and started seeing them as cases, challenges, opportunities, and money. No one said it out loud, but everyone in my field knew the unspoken rule. Your worth as a surgeon wasn't just in your skill. It was in the clients you attracted. Wealthy donors, celebrities, anyone who could pad the hospital's coffers. Those were the patients that mattered. The rest, someone else could handle them. The night it happened, I was on call at the hospital. It was late, well past midnight, and I was in my office finishing up paperwork when a nurse burst through the door. Dr. Campbell, we got a trauma case. They're asking for you in the ER. I sighed. I hadn't been planning to operate that night. What's the situation? I asked. Male, mid-20s, car accident. Severe internal injuries. We need to get him into surgery immediately. And his insurance? She blinked, caught off guard. I'm not sure. The EMTs didn't find any ID on him. That was all I needed to hear. Call the on-call physician, I said, turning back to my desk. I'm not taking this one. But Dr. Campbell. I said no. My voice was sharp, final. The nurse hesitated for a moment, then left without another word. I didn't think about it again that night. I told myself it wasn't my problem. It wasn't until hours later, after my shift had ended, that I heard what happened. The on-call surgeon arrived too late. The man's injuries were severe, and without immediate intervention, there was nothing they could do. I should have felt something, guilt, regret, anything, but I didn't. Not at first. It was just another case, another name I wouldn't remember by the end of the week. But then I saw him. I don't know what compelled me to go to the morgue that night. Maybe it was boredom, or curiosity, or some lingering sense of responsibility. Whatever it was, I found myself walking down the cold, sterile hallway, pushing open the door and stepping inside. The pathologist nodded to me as I approached the table. "This the one from the accident," she said, pulling back the sheet. And there he was, my son. The world stopped. It didn't make sense. How could it be him? He wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be on that table. I stared at his face, frozen in shock, waiting for someone to tell me it was a mistake, that the body in front of me wasn't real, wasn't him. But no one said anything. He didn't have any ID, the pathologist said, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. The EMTs said they found him unconscious at the scene, but there was no way to identify him. "Do you know who he is?" I couldn't speak. The memories flooded back all at once. The years I'd spent putting my career above my family, the missed birthdays, the strained phone calls, the way my son's voice had changed over time, hopeful and eager when he was little, cold and distant by the end. The last thing he'd ever said to me was, "You never have time, Dad." And he was right. I should have saved him. I could have saved him. If I'd just gone to the ER, if I'd walked down that hall, if I'd taken 5 minutes to do what I was trained to do, my son would still be alive. But I didn't. I looked at him the way I looked at every other patient. As a number, a statistic, someone else's problem. Now, I can't close my eyes without seeing his face. Every time I walk into a hospital, I hear the sound of the monitor flatlining, the beeping fading into silence. My hands shake when I hold a scalpel, and I haven't stepped into an operating room since that night. The worst part is no one knows. I haven't told anyone, not my ex-wife, not my colleagues, no one. How could I? What could I possibly say? I'm not sure why I'm even telling this story now. Maybe I'm hoping it'll help me find some kind of peace, though I doubt it will. The truth is, I don't know how to live with what I've done, and I don't know if it's worth living at all. Dr. Campbell's story is a heartbreaking reminder of how our own decisions can come back to haunt us in ways we never imagined. The next story comes from another subscriber, a lawyer whose ambition and confidence led him into a situation that spiraled far beyond his control. It's a chilling account of deception and regret. Here's what he shared with us. They say every lawyer has a case that defines them, one they carry for the rest of their lives. I thought mine would be a victory, a case that made headlines and cemented my reputation. I was wrong. It wasn't a case I won that defined me. It was a mistake, one I can't escape no matter how hard I try. My name is Marcus. I was, a defense attorney in New York City. I made a name for myself early on by taking on clients other lawyers wouldn't touch. The scum of the earth, people whispered. They weren't wrong, but I didn't care. My job wasn't to judge. It was to win, and I was good at it. My record spoke for itself. This story, though, isn't about my successes. It's about the one case I wish I'd walked away from. It started on an ordinary Tuesday. I was in my office, reviewing a high-profile case involving a tech billionaire accused of fraud. My assistant knocked on the door, looking uneasy. "Marcus, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent." I sighed, annoyed at the interruption. "Tell him to call my office and book a consultation like everyone else." "He's different," she said, hesitating. "I think you should talk to him." I almost sent her away, but something in her voice made me pause. I put down the file and told her to send him in. The man who walked into my office was unremarkable. Mid-40s, average build, wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit quite right. He introduced himself as John Drenner. "I need your help," he said, his voice steady but his eyes darting nervously. "Mr. Drenner, I don't take walk-ins. If you'd like to schedule a—" "Please," he interrupted. "This isn't just about me. It's bigger than that. If you don't help me, innocent people will suffer." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "You'll have to be more specific." He told me he was a whistleblower, an insider at a major corporation. According to him, the company was involved in shady dealings, embezzlement, blackmail, even covering up environmental damage that had devastated entire communities. He said he had evidence to prove it, but the company's lawyers were threatening him with a lawsuit that would ruin his life. It wasn't the kind of case I usually took. Whistleblowers didn't pay well, and they rarely won. But something about the way he spoke intrigued me. He wasn't desperate in the way most clients were. He was calm, deliberate. Too calm, maybe. "How do you plan to pay my fees?" I asked bluntly. "I don't have much," he admitted. "But if you take this case, I promise it will make your career. You'll be the lawyer who brought down one of the most powerful corporations in America." He wasn't wrong. The case had the potential to make headlines. Against my better judgment, I agreed to take it. The trial was brutal. The corporation's lawyers threw everything they had at me, digging up dirt on my client and twisting every piece of evidence in their favor. But I fought back with everything I had. I dissected their arguments, poked holes in their witnesses' testimonies, and turned the jury's sympathy toward John. In the end, we won. The corporation was ordered to pay millions in damages, and John walked out of the courtroom a free man. But something about the victory didn't sit right with me. The night of the verdict, I was sitting in my office, going over the case files one last time. There were small inconsistencies, things I'd overlooked in the heat of the trial. John's story didn't quite add up. Some of the evidence he'd provided seemed almost too perfect, like it had been planted. And then there was the envelope. It arrived the day after the trial. No return address, just my name written in neat, block letters. Inside was a single piece of paper with 4 words. "You've saved the wrong man." I told myself it was a prank. Lawyers in high-profile cases get hate mail all the time. But something about the note gnawed at me. I started digging, going over the evidence with a fine-tooth comb. The more I looked, the more uneasy I became. A week later, I got a call from a journalist who'd been covering the trial. She said she had information about my client that I needed to see. We met at a coffee shop downtown. She handed me a folder filled with documents, emails, financial records, and photos. "Where did you get this?" I asked, flipping through the pages. "I can't reveal my source," she said. "But let's just say your client isn't who he claims to be." The documents painted a chilling picture. John wasn't a whistleblower. He was an opportunist who had used me to take down the corporation so he could eliminate his competition. The evidence he provided had been fabricated, and the damages awarded to him were being funneled into offshore accounts. I felt sick. I'd been played. Worse, I'd helped him destroy a company and the livelihoods of thousands of employees. I tried to contact John, but he disappeared. His phone was disconnected, and his apartment was empty. That was months ago. I don't practice law anymore. I couldn't, even if I wanted to. My reputation is in tatters, and I've been disbarred for tampering with evidence I didn't even know was fake. But the worst part isn't the professional fallout. It's the guilt. Every night, I lie awake replaying the trial in my mind, wondering how I missed the signs. I see the faces of the people who lost their jobs because of my arrogance. I hear their voices, their anger, their pain. And then there's the letter. I still don't know who sent it. Sometimes I think it was the journalist, or maybe one of the corporation's lawyers. But other times, I wonder if it came from someone I'll never see, someone who wanted me to know exactly what I'd done. I've thought about reaching out to the families affected by the trial, trying to make amends. But what would I say? What could I possibly do to make things right? The truth is, I can't. I don't know how to live with what I've done. These were stories from our subscribers. If you have an experience you'd like to share, send it to us using the email in the description of this video. Who knows? Maybe your story will be featured in one of our upcoming videos. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.